And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
The matchups are set. It's nearly go time on the Stanley Cup playoffs. Brought to you by our good friends over at Skip. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice playoff preview edition. Nick Alberga and Jake Hahn with you. What's going on, Jake?
Nick, my friend, I am as fired up as I've ever been. We finally made it. First round of the NHL playoffs is just a couple days away. We'll get into all the playoff pool angles, brackets, odds in terms of the matchups and everything on this episode. And this episode, as always, is brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.
Oh, yeah. It's all bases covered on today's podcast. Are the Dallas Stars fired up is my biggest question to start this podcast, because, man, oh, man, the last thing you want to finish the regular season is an injury, and Jason Robertson goes down here.
Well, you get one body back, and then maybe you lose another, right? Tyler Seguin comes back. Everybody's excited. He gets an assist, 15, 16 seconds into the game. Vibes are high, and then you lose a guy like Jason Robertson. So that's the last thing you want to see in these meaningless games at the end of the season, Nick. That's why we see players resting and taking these games off, and it's just a tough way to go into the playoffs, especially for a Dallas team that's already missing their best defenseman in Miro Heiskanen.
Not to mention a very tough draw here with the Colorado Avalanche, and just overnight the price has changed in that series, and I think it's understandable the way it's changed, right? You look at Heiskanen and you look at Robertson. Those are two big pieces. We know Heiskanen's not going to play. We don't know about Robertson just yet, but there's a reason, I think, why Colorado is the favorite in that series.
This is going to be a fun series to debate, obviously, before the series starts. And I think as the series goes on and we see the swings back and forth between the two, Nick, I don't know where you stand on this one. I think maybe before this injury, the hockey world split. I know Meany's going to be coming up a little bit later. I think he's going to be leaning Dallas Stars here. I'm thinking Colorado Avalanche, and this is that boom or bust series. I mean, someone's going home in the first round guaranteed, and whoever makes it through is going to be a very legitimate, dangerous Stanley Cup contender. Where do you stand on Dallas, Colorado? I think it's probably the most interesting series of them all.
Yeah, even entering this series, I was going to go with Colorado. I just like what they did at the trade deadline, and we're going to jump into this series wholeheartedly over the next little while, but I think just the depth they created up the middle. No Heiskanen, I think, is a big-time factor in this series. I like that they solidified the crease, so I'm probably angling it towards Colorado. And in fact, I'd probably handicap it the way it's being handicapped right now with, Colorado, the decisive favorite in the series. I just like them a bit more, and Dallas is banged up right now. I know they get Tyler Seguin back in the mix at the very least.
It's a tough one for playoff pools as well, playoff fantasy pools, Nick, because obviously we know how great Cale Makar is. We know how great Nathan MacKinnon is. There's other players on that Avs roster that we'd be interested in as well. Same goes for Dallas. I know they're a little bit more spread out, more of a deeper approach than maybe the Avs with those top guys, but teams that people would be very interested in playoff pools, but you run the risk of stacking one of those teams and going out in the first round. But hey, that's what playoff pools are all about, Nick. You got to take risks, this boom or bust approach. I always go for the ceiling play. If I flame out in the first round, then so be it. I'm going for the win.
Jake, a lot of people messaged me the last couple of days, hey, I got a playoff pool coming up. Who should I select first overall?
Good
I know
luck.
you've been pulled this question a billion times. Who are you taking, buddy?
This is probably I have to say this is the most difficult year for this question. I really don't think that there's an exact answer to this. You look at the top two teams from the season, Winnipeg, Washington. I don't think anybody's taken any of those players first overall. I mean, I guess unless you really like the Jets, you go Kyle Connor. If you like the Caps, maybe you go Alex Ovechkin. At the end of the day, I go back to what I just said, Nick. Ceiling. I'm going for the ceiling, and for me, the highest ceiling is Nathan MacKinnon and the Colorado Avalanche. So Nate Dogg off the board, number one for me. How about you?
Ooh, I like that. And again, a lot of this will determine, how you see your bracket. I think that's the biggest advice for playoff pools we can give off the top here is fill out your bracket. Bracketchallenge.nhl.com, presented by Skip, where you can do that right now, and then go from there. My pick's Connor McDavid. It's pretty simple, man. Like, I think you talk about ceiling and potential. There is nobody like McDavid. He had a down year. He had 100 points. It's insanity to me. And then you look at what he does in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He backs it up too, Jake. 74 career games, 37 goals, 80 assists, 117 points. So my pick would be Connor McDavid first overall.
So I group those two together right now in terms of having tough first round matchups, maybe some question marks going into the first round, but we talk about that ceiling, right? And that boomer bust potential. If the Oilers break through, have the season like they did last year, yeah, McDavid's going to be looking like a very smart pick. Same thing with Nathan MacKinnon. The reason why I go MacKinnon over McDavid, Nick, is I just have more faith in the Avs. I understand they could still lose in the first round to Dallas. That would shock nobody based on how good the Stars are, but I'm going to play that ceiling potential, and I just trust the Avs more than I do the Oilers right now. I don't like how Edmonton's heading into the postseason.
Jake, what's your general strategy when it comes to playoff pools? I like approaching team stacks, certainly sleepers, part of the conversation, X factors. But from a team, a stack perspective, who are some teams you're looking at to sort of add some players and a plethora of players from?
So I like to kind of tier it a little bit. Like I have maybe a group of 2 or 3 teams in the first handful of rounds that I know the general public is going to be interested in. So, okay, I'm going to have to move to get some of these guys on my roster. So, maybe rank them a little bit. Okay, you like Colorado, you like Washington, pick one of the Atlantic teams. Maybe you like Tampa. You rank them into a group and you kind of go for those players in the first handful of rounds. And then I would have another tier of sleeper teams, right? Maybe you think New Jersey is a deep sleeper, or Minnesota or St. Louis or one of these other teams, and those guys are going to be hanging around late in your draft. So I like to tier it a little bit, go for my big boys early, and then see if I can maybe find an angle on a team nobody's thinking about later in my pool.
Well, I was going to add 2 teams that maybe you should think about sort of adding players from. Tampa, the highest scoring team in the regular season. Washington, the second highest scoring team in the regular season. And that's the intrigue specifically in the Eastern Conference. A team like Washington is getting minimal love right now. I would try to stack with Colorado, guys like McKinnon, Necas, Lehkonen, Dallas with Rantanen, Johnston, etc. there. Vegas, I mean, they're going to be a favorite for a lot of people. Eichel, Hurdle, Barbashev, Stone. There's a variety of different routes you can go there too.
So you asked me first overall. I said Nate, you said Connor. But if I were to maybe extend the conversation a little bit, look at some other guys. Nikita Kucherov is another really interesting ceiling name. If Tampa can go on that run, you'd love to have Kuch, obviously, on your roster. And you mentioned Vegas. I think Vegas is a team that they've got a very gettable side of the bracket. I think a nice path to the conference final. I'm very interested in Vegas. I wouldn't hate Eichel at number 1 as well if you wanted to make that pick. He's done it before. This Vegas team is proven. So there's a lot of different options that you can go to. But I think for me, Vegas, Tampa Bay, Washington, those are the teams I'd be looking at early. It's just the Caps seem to be a pretty tricky team to stack right now, don't they?
They are. I don't know what Capitals team to expect. Maybe it's the great hangover. Maybe it's not. But 4 and 6 down the stretch for the Washington Capitals. Jake, everybody always asks about sleepers. I got some guys to throw your way. 16 of them. You want to hear them one by one?
Okay, let's go. List them.
All right. Cole Perfetti, Jimmy Snuggerud, Tyler Seguin, Brock Nelson, Pavel Dorofeev, Marco Rossi, Kuzmenko, Arvidsson, Matthew Knies with the Leafs, Jake Sanderson with Ottawa, Brendan Hagel. I would classify him as a sleeper because nobody's really going to pile on Tampa. Mackie Samoskevich with Florida, Ryan Leonard, Ivan Demidov with Montreal. I think you have to take a look at him if you believe in the Montreal Canadiens. Then Taylor Hall and Luke Hughes. But there's a lot of guys out there that you could probably find value on late in your playoff pool here.
Well, I really like Hagel, especially if you like the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, he has just been a focal point of that offense. I'm going to select Dorofeev out of those names that you mentioned, Nick. I've brought him up so many times on the show throughout the course of the year. Why stop now as we head into the playoffs? And you mentioned Matthew Knies on that list as well. Actually, heading to Thursday night, needs 1 goal for 30. So we'll see if the Leafs can get him that 30-goal season as he heads into the playoffs. But look, we know the narrative surrounding the Leafs in the playoffs. It's been around for a long time. This is their best chance to at least go on a decent run, at least make the second round, heck, maybe even the conference final. And Matthew Knies looks like he's legitimately tied to that top line with Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews. So there's a lot to like there as well.
I would like to bring in Pete Jensen, who did great work alongside Chris Meany over at NHL.com/fantasy, getting people set for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Pete, who's number 1 on your list? What else can we look at? And maybe some sleepers as well here.
So I am going to side with Jake here with MacKinnon. I have the Avs going all the way. It's one of those boom or bust scenarios. And credit to Jake. I remember early in the season, he was touting the Avalanche, and I was kind of like, what are you seeing here other than the elite big 3? Now Rantanen goes to Dallas. I think that Colorado, with all the pieces they added, are an even more robust team, way more than early in the year when they were dealing with so many injuries. And Necas, I have him in the top 10 as well, along with Makar and McKinnon. So loading up on the Avs a little bit here.
Ooh, okay. How about some sleepers, Petey?
Well, actually, first, who would you rather have? This is a great debate. Trade revisited. Who would you rather have in a fantasy playoff pool? Rantanen, who I know Meany is high on, or Martin Necas? What do you think, Jake?
Well, I know what Meany's going to say. He's going to say Mikko Rantanen because I've been listening to him quite a bit. I'm gonna go Necas just because I like Colorado to win that series. Strictly because I do like the Avs to make it through. It's going to be tough. It's probably going to go deep. It's probably going to go 6-7 games. But I do like that attachment to the top six, the power play in Colorado. So I'm going to go Party Marty. I know Meany's probably sitting there thinking, man, no, Rantanen is the play. Alberga, you want to break the tie here?
Yeah, I love Mikko Rantanen, but I think Colorado's going to win this series, so I'm going to go with Party Marty as well. I think it's going to be close. I think if you want to look at Rantanen to lead the series in goals, that's a good sort of flyer to take, but I think Necas will end up being the bigger player in terms of point production. But it's going to be a really, really close series, despite some of the injuries we sort of discussed earlier on. But that's always a fascinating debate. Like, that's why, Pete, I'm so excited for that series, is the revenge aspect, obviously.
No, it's true. And then also a former Dallas Star, Valerie Nichushkin. Like, if there's ever an X factor in the Stanley Cup playoffs with all the strange things have gone on with that guy's career and, leaving the team kind of out to dry during the postseason twice before, right? I mean, he's kind of like a polarizing player here where if he's healthy, the Avs are one of the best teams, if not the best team in the whole league. And fantasy sleeper wise, I feel like a lot of people are going to fade Nichushkin just because of those past concerns.
Well, and that's what I was just about to say, Pete, is that maybe at least in some pools, probably not the pool I play in because I'm going to be jumping on Big Val. I like the Avs. I've always been a Nichushkin guy. I'm willing to take the risk. But Nick, I do think that with what's happened in the playoffs with him a couple times now might scare some people off and just say, well, yeah, I'd rather take some of the other Avs before I get to Big Val, but he is going to be a focal point of that offense in Colorado. There's no doubt.
Oh, no doubt about that. And guys, the one angle I like playing in playoff pools is the younger players that don't know what it's like to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it seems like they seem to feed off that, Pete. And that's why the Capitals, the Montreal Canadiens series really, really intrigues me. You have Ryan Leonard against Ivan Demidov, who's had an unbelievable first week here in the NHL. But who are some younger players, Pete, maybe to target in playoff pool drafts here?
You nailed one of my two teams. I think that the Montreal Canadiens and the St. Louis Blues. The Blues, a little contingent on the status of Dylan Holloway because I didn't love what I saw from them the last couple games of the season. Montreal struggled as well down the stretch, but Montreal strikes me as a team that's about to pull an upset here against Washington that really was sluggish down the stretch outside of the Ovi great chase. I think that you're going to get good value on Suzuki, good value on Lane Hudson, great value on Demidov, Patrick Laine, and I just feel like that young core is ready to pop here. They don't know any better to, be fazed by these big moments ahead.
And guys, I think the great thing about playoff pool, Jake, is that you can find value, but you also can be eliminated very, very quickly in the first round. I think this year more than ever, you can make a serious case for 8, 9, maybe even 10 teams to win the Stanley Cup this time around.
Well, that's the thing. You could play it safe. I've been in so many playoff pools over the year. You can play it safe and finish third or fourth. No problem. You stack a team, you spread some guys out, and I finished fourth in my pool, but I didn't win anything. So I go for broke. It's what you said off the top, Nick. You stack of teams, you pick an angle, you pick a lane, and you run with it. And if your lane hits, then you're probably winning your pool, right? So I think that's always the way I like to attack it. Ricky Bobby style, first or last. That's how I approach every playoff pool, Nick.
Love that. Rule number 1, fill out your bracket, go from there. Free food, beauty. Skip 60 to score is here. Get even more wins during the Stanley Cup playoffs. How to play, you ask? Place a game day order to play, pick your team, and get your minute. If either team scores during that time, you score a $25 Skip voucher. Order and play 60 to score in the Skip app to take your shot now until May 19th. Getter one. I love that tagline. But yeah, that Washington Montreal series intrigues the hell out of me, Jake. I got to go dog hunting, buddy. I think I'm taking Montreal in that series.
I know. I think we're going to disagree on this one. And I get why Montreal might end up being a bit of a trendy upset here. I mean, Pete mentioned it. Washington not playing great, and it's been very evident the last few weeks. I think the OV chase took a lot of oxygen out of this team. But I actually think that the OV chase ended at the perfect time. I know they haven't played great since then, but yeah, they partied a little bit. They had a few days off. The games at the end of the season have been pretty meaningless, but it's at least given them a couple weeks to reset for the playoffs. If we were doing the OV chase this last week of the season, that would worry me a little bit with Washington. So I think they have a chance to reset. I trust Spencer Carberry. The Bell Center will be electric, but I trust the Capitals to get this thing done and move into the second round.
Another two things that add to my worries about Washington right now are Alexi Protas and Logan Thompson, two of the crucial members of the most surprising team in the league this year, have been out for a little while now with injuries. I don't know their status at the moment, but combine their recent play and just the injury situation going on with that team, I'm scared off a little bit at Washington. I feel like something weird's going to happen, like a weird team is going to get to the conference finals out of that Metro bracket, and Montreal is now a part of that Metro bracket, which makes them a really intriguing sleeper.
You just never know, and Davey Satriano is going to love me for this. I think there's a lot of value, guys, in the New Jersey Devils opening up their price at plus 240. I know Jack Hughes is not playing, Jake, but I think that's big that you get Dougie Hamilton back in the mix, and never say never. There's a lot of value in the Devils this year.
We agree on this one. I think in terms of actually making like a bracket prediction, I'm probably still going to go with Carolina, but if we look at the odds and you see it, that's a huge number on New Jersey. And when you really look at it, okay, they're missing Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes is an unbelievable player, best forward, clearly, on the New Jersey Devils. But they get Dougie Hamilton back. It's one guy, and they do have some other forwards that can push the pace offensively. Bratt, Timo Meier, Nico Hischier. There's a little bit of depth there up front. And Sheldon Keefe, I know he's had a lot of playoff failures, Nick, but I like to think he learned from them over the years. And, coaching in that Atlantic division is really difficult. You're going up against the teams that usually go to the Cup final every year. Not saying Carolina is an easy matchup, but I think he can draw from that experience, maybe game plan a little bit, and I would not be shocked if New Jersey makes that a bit of a series, and they're paying a huge price on that series price.
Jake, from what I've gathered, the Eastern Conference is wide open, and that's what makes playoff pools really, really unique this time of year and trying to handicap series as well. Even the fifth installment of the Battle of Ontario, the Maple Leafs have been red hot. I think Anthony Stolarz is a guy to look at in playoff pools. His last 8 games, 8-0-0, .950 save percentage, 3 shutouts. Linus Ullmark, his first postseason as a member of the Ottawa Senators. And then you talk about the Tkachuk brothers. I mean, you can tie in the conversation about the Battle of Florida, which should be a bloodbath as well, but the Tkachuk brothers returning as well.
Maybe we still get the Tkachuk battle in the second round. There is potential that could happen if both of those teams end up winning. So I'm not ruling it out happening at some point in the postseason. Pete made an interesting point, too, about Montreal getting on that Metro side of the bracket. I think the way easier... To me, the 3 best teams, maybe you throw Washington in there as well in the East, are all the top 3 Atlantic Division teams. Toronto, Tampa, Florida. They're just going to eat each other alive, and maybe someone from that Metro team or Metro side can have a little bit of success. Nick, are we just sleeping on Florida right now? Are they kind of the sleeping giant? I guess Edmonton's a bit of the same conversation in the West right now, but they won the Stanley Cup last year. They made it to the Cup final the year before, and it feels like a lot of people are kind of leaning towards the Tampa Bay Lightning right now.
So I'm on NHL.com last night. I'm filling out my bracket as soon as Montreal goes and clinches a playoff spot. They'll play Washington, of course. And I was really torn on the Florida Panthers because I could see them go out in round 1. I could see them winning the Stanley Cup. And at some point in time, you would think that team has to hit a wall. I haven't liked how they've played down the stretch, but then that said, they did get up for a couple games, specifically against a rival in the Toronto Maple Leafs. So they've shown that it's there. But I wonder if it gets to a point where fatigue is a factor. And that series is going to be something special. Every time those two teams get together, it's an all-out brawl.
I think there's 2 clear marquee series. It's the Battle of Florida and it's the Rantanen Bowl between Dallas and Colorado. One in the East, one in the West. Those are our series that will be on the marquee, the top of the billing every night whenever those two series are going on. So I can't wait for that one, Nick. And I've always said I do feel like even though Tampa's had some early playoff exits the last few years, at some point they're going to go on another deep run with Cooper behind the bench and Kucherov, and they've done a great job keeping that core intact in Tampa with the salary cap becoming an an issue. So I'm leaning Tampa. I have a lot of respect for Florida, but I do think the Bolts come in with better form, Pete, and a chance to actually exercise some demons and get back into the second round here.
Another series that I'm just really torn on, and it's because of Vasilevsky. Like, if you were going to rank the goalies based on past pedigree and performance this season, Vasilevsky, two-time Cup champ, right, had an amazing regular season. I trust him more than Hellebuck. I mean, it's up for debate who's the best goalie tandem out there, whether it's Dallas or Colorado. Both have a case, but to me, the best individual goalie in the playoffs entering the thing is Vasilevsky.
I love that you brought up goaltending and Andrei Vasilevsky because I look at that Winnipeg Jets St. Louis Blues series, and again, a lot of value in the Blues. They've been red hot. Jake, I got a couple numbers to throw your way. You ready?
I'm ready. Hit me with some Blues numbers. I bet they're good.
Well, Jordan Binnington, first and foremost, since the Four Nations, 13-3-1, 2.23, 910 save percentage. Connor Hellebuck's numbers in the playoffs, 18-27-0, 2.85, a 910 save percentage. This is going to be a closer series than people think, man.
I think I would have rather saw them get on the Pacific side of the bracket. Not that, I mean, Vegas would be a tough first-round matchup, obviously, but if you get through Vegas, I think that second-round matchup becomes a little bit more enticing where, okay, you're getting either LA or Edmonton, but they end up on the Central side. They are a Central Division team, so they're familiar with all these teams. So you're going to have to go Winnipeg and then the winner of Colorado-Dallas. That is a tough path to the conference final. So as great of a story as St. Louis has been, and I do think they're going to give Winnipeg a series in the first round. It's hard for me to buy into them too much, but you do mention some of those players. I mean, Binnington is an X factor and probably the best goaltending matchup we're going to get in the first round, or at least one of the most intriguing, with Hellebuck coming off back-to-back Vezina seasons and Binnington being that playoff at big game X factor.
Guys, is that your favorite Four Nations storyline? Either something's going to happen in this tournament that feeds off the momentum from that, whether it's Binnington beating Hellebuck or Brady Tkachuk having a monster postseason. Remember, Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson, guys, have never played in the postseason before, but they got a little taste of what it's all about in the Four Nations. So, and then there's other guys like Suzuki was a snub, and some of these other guys were snubbed. So curious what you think, what your favorite Four Nations related storyline might be.
Favorite storyline was Connor McDavid scoring an OT to bring Canada gold in that number one in that tournament. I don't even know if it was called gold, but that was my favorite storyline. But yeah, there's a lot of intrigue, right? Even John Tavares, the finish he had after being snubbed from Team Canada.
Yep.
I think this has to be high atop my list. I'm looking forward to Winnipeg and St. Louis. The big factors for me, guys, Ehlers' status moving forward. I saw he's week to week, and Dylan Holloway. But, Jake, there's just something about Winnipeg, and maybe you called them the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Western Conference. It gets to the postseason. They're a different team. But, dude, they had an unbelievable regular season. They win the President's Trophy.
Well, it feels like 3 of the 4 1 seeds are being overlooked, at least in some aspects right now. Vegas is the only one I feel like most of us agree. Well, yeah, it's Vegas. Yeah, they should move on. They should be the favorite. Toronto, we get the narrative. They're going to be overlooked. People are looking at Ottawa for the upset. Winnipeg, a lot of people are looking completely past them, just saying, okay, it's going to be Colorado or Dallas. Like, this Jets team is really good. They're very deep. I trust Connor Hellebuck. I get he didn't have a good playoffs last year. I don't care. He's a great goaltender. I think he can handle the pressure just fine. And Washington's another team I think a lot of people are looking at to prove them something in the playoffs. So if we're gonna get some value at any point in the Jets, Nick, I'm gonna be in. I'll let Colorado and Dallas beat each other up in the first round. I'll kick back and enjoy it. I think Winnipeg takes care of business in the first round, has home ice against one of those teams. I like the way things are shaping up for this Jets team.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think you look conversely at that Vegas-Minnesota series. Nobody's really talking about it. And I know Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek are back, and I think goaltending is going to be a big factor in that series. But I just don't see a pathway right now where Minnesota wins that series. Do you?
Not really. It's tough to make that case. Although Minnesota has been kind of this team like laying in the weeds a little bit, right? Hoping to get some bodies back. They get Eriksson Ek back. They get Kaprizov back. So, I mean, I could see them at least extending the series, but ultimately winning 4 games against Vegas feels a little difficult, especially for a team that could barely beat Anaheim this week to make the playoffs. I know they did it in dramatic fashion. So I'm going to be on Vegas in that series, but I could see them pushing it to at least 6 games.
Jake, it's official. We're going to go toe-to-toe just to wrap here the
go.
playoff preview portion. I'm taking the Edmonton Oilers. It's official. Fourth year in a row. They're 3-0 here against the Los Angeles Kings. I just read very directly into Connor McDavid's comments about health the other day. You don't think we're healthy? Something like that. Like, hey, these guys have been resting for a while. Okay, let's put it that way.
Well, I'm glad you didn't waver, Nick, because we've been talking about this potential round 4 between these two teams going back almost a couple months now. And, I've been pro Kings, you've been pro Oilers. So I'm glad you didn't jump over to my side. Stick with your team. We'll go head to head on this one. It's time to get history out of the way for LA, exercise some demons, however you want to put it. I think they're in better form. A lot of concerns with Edmonton. I know Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, unbelievable high end potential, but LA's getting it done in the 4th version of the LA Edmonton series.
We need a moral compass, so we're going to bring in Chris Meany. Want to get into the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs at Bet365? We've got you covered. From game props, player props, totals, and the money line. You can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, Stanley Cup champions, and much, much more. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit ConnexOntario.ca. Means we are jacked for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Congratulations to your Montreal Canadiens, man. This should be fun. Who are a couple Cup favorites to look at?
Yeah, this is just listening to you guys talk through this is awesome. And I don't remember a season like this where you could make a case for not one, but two essential 8 seeds, right? The final 2 teams in the East and in the West in the wild card situation in the Habs and the Blues. I kind of wanted to start there. I'm not with you guys on Montreal. It's been a fun story. The Caps have certainly struggled over the past few weeks, but I think that they're going to get this thing right. I think that they'll take care of the Canadians. I like them in 6 in this series. And, the biggest thing is Logan Thompson for sure, Jake. You want him healthy and you want Protas, who's been their best 5-5 player all year long. But I think what Nick said earlier and just having that Ovechkin chase, getting it done a couple weeks early and being able to rest some guys here down the stretch, I think they'll be fine. But, man, the Blues, Jake, are certainly alive.
It's hard for me to picture that Montreal team. It's just that the lines 2, 3, and 4, it just doesn't match up with what Washington has. They do have a legitimate top line. I like Suzuki. I like that team for the next couple of years. I think they're really trending in the right direction with some exciting young talent. I just don't think it's this year. I think Washington's going to step up and win that series. Personally, any of these big underdogs jumping out to you here, Meany, that you'd feel like sprinkling in? Clearly not Montreal. We just kind of talked about that. You mentioned St. Louis. Maybe some interest there at a big price. And Nick and I threw around the Devils. Maybe no one's talking about New Jersey. I forgot the Devils were even in the playoffs. That's how little the Devils are being talked about right now.
It does feel like that's a misprice, doesn't it? I mean, I can't really buy what the Carolina Hurricanes are selling here, not just this year, but in years past. The goals have dried up. The goaltending has been mediocre over the past couple years, but the Devils are struggling offensively. Nice boost to get Dougie Hamilton back. But yeah, at minus 245 roughly over at Bet365 for Carolina, I would just maybe consider them in the series spread. They have owned the Devils over the past few years in the playoffs at minus 115. I like the Vegas Golden Knights quite a bit. You guys talked about Minnesota. Nice to get some guys back in their lineup like Joel Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov. But I really like this Golden Knights team. They rested Eichel. They're deep down the middle with Eichel, with Hurdle, who's back. Missed some time. He's healthy. And then William Karlsson's been really good over the past little bit. So, you can do a series prop parlay with Vegas and Carolina, get plus 115 for those two teams. I like the Blues at plus 155. The fewest regulation losses since the Four Nations face-off. The Canadians, the second fewest, but I really do feel like Washington will be able to flip that switch. So I like the Blues there. And Nick, I know you talked a lot about the Oilers, and it's tough to pick against McDavid and Draisaitl, but I really like the fact that the Kings finally have home ice advantage. They've been the best home team all year long, and the X factor in this series will be Darcy Kuemper. It's the reason I haven't been able to get behind the Kings, Nick, over the past couple years. I've always been Team Edmonton, but Kuemper, the edge stats, he leads all goalies in high danger save percentage. Skinner and Pickard will probably see both at times in this series, well below the NHL average, and Kemper's been the best goalie since January 1st, so I really like where LA's at.
You don't got to sell me on LA. I just look at McDavid and Draisaitl. Those guys seem to play their best hockey in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and betting against them is really, really difficult for me. There's always sweeps or sweeps or sweep or sweeps plural. Are there any series you look at means where you're like a sweep might happen here?
Oh man, I don't think so. Like this
No?
is, I look across all 8 series and it's just like it's tough. It's tough to handicap. You know, you have Colorado and Dallas. I think whoever comes, I've been labeled the Stars guy, I think. And guys, I don't know. Like Jason Robertson going down last night.
Yeah.
I think I have to change my tune. Like that's enough for me to change my tune and go with the Avs as close as that series is going to be. Robertson has been electric for them, and all of a sudden he's out. So that series is tough. I think the winner of that will go to the finals, and I think the winner of the Tampa Bay and Florida series, I would say Carolina, as much as we're kind of like downplaying them and being heavy favorites, Pete, I think for the Hurricanes playing a Devils team without Jack Hughes, question marks in goal, that's a series I think could be a sweep. And I'll go back to Vegas. You know, I think the Golden Knights, with all their experience and the blue line that they have, and Aiden Hill and what he did a couple years ago, leading them to a cup, that's a potential sweep as well. But I don't think we'll see one, guys.
I think you have to look at the floor with this scenario, and I don't like the floor for the Edmonton Oilers at all. I mean, Matthias Ekholm has been ruled out for the first round. They don't have any depth. I was looking at their sleepers and their X factors, and I was like, I can't find one. Like, who's it going to be? That's not a good sign, right?
Jake
Guys,
Wallman.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good one. Wallman's a good one, but he was even banged up down the stretch. So
Yeah.
I just don't – I worry about the floor of the Oilers. That was my preseason cup pick, and I'm out on the Oilers. I'm flip-flopping. I got the Kings winning this series, guys.
Okay.
Interesting.
Jake?
Okay, so Nick, you're kind of on an island here. It sounds like Petey's on the Kings, I'm on the Kings, Meany's on the Kings. I do like that number a lot. It's a better number than I thought we were gonna get on the LA Kings. How about Conn Smythe Trophy, guys? Obviously, you got to get the team right, which is very difficult. But Meany, is there any names that jump out to you out of those teams that you mentioned you think could win the Stanley Cup? This is where we could really find some pretty big numbers compared to the Stanley Cup odds. You get some nice juicy numbers over at Bet365 on the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yeah, I'll also throw some numbers at you guys. Nick, I'll toss a couple at you and see what your favorite is. I mean, Hellebuck and Nate McKinnon are the favorites here, and I think we're all down a little bit on the Jets. They're probably getting disrespected, but at the same time, you know, Ehlers week to week and Velarde not 100%. They just don't think they have. I just don't think they have the offensive depth to get it done. Cale Makar is 22-1. Vasilevsky is 30-1. Jack Eichel is 25-1. Austin Matthews is 30-1. How about Wyatt Johnson? And I know I'm sitting here as the Dallas Stars guy here, but Wyatt Johnson is a stud. And if you looked at Dallas over the last years in the playoffs, back-to-back, going to the Western Conference Finals, and Wyatt Johnson's been electric. Arguably their best player in the playoffs over the past couple years. So him at 40-1 as a guy who could jump up on that first line in the first series if Robertson is sidelined. And here is a long shot for you, Nick. I already heard you mention this name. If the Leafs win the Cup,
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
like all those stars that they have in Matthews and Marner and William Nylander, may be tough to pick one of those three. And I know we can sit here and people are listening, Leafs won the Cup. What are you talking about? Anthony Stolarz is 75-1. And he has been absolutely amazing all year long, and especially down the stretch. And if they are going to get over this hump, Nick, it's going to be because of Stolarz.
That's my spicy take. I think we see Joseph Woll in that series too. I would not discredit a Joseph Woll run, man. The guy is really, really good in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And maybe that's but I think the majority of teams use both goaltenders if they have that option. I thought you were going to say Matthew Knies. I think there's a long approach to him, Matthew Knies potentially being involved in the Conn Smythe conversation. But realistically means I think the convo is pretty short when you look at most teams. Edmonton, it's two guys. I think you can make the case for like the star players having the inside track, but you just never know sometimes. There's some guys who've won the Conn Smythe before.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, just to mention Knies, I got some series goal leader props for you guys. Matthew Knies is 10-1, right? That's a pretty good number for a guy that's been having a really good season, playing on the power play, the first unit, and with, you know, playmaker Mitch Marner. And of course, we all know that Nylander and Austin Matthews are going to steal the show, but Knies at 10-1 is a good number. Jackson Blake at 12-1, again, another guy on the top line in Carolina and playing on the first power play. Nick, you mentioned Hagel as well. How about a guy, first time in NHL history, like 30-plus goals, none of them on the power play. He's 11-1. And I think my X factor here, two guys, and Jake, I know you're like the second guy, but Adrian Kempe, and look at his shot prop throughout the series against the Oilers, 3+ shots in 20 of his past 22 games against Edmonton, 5 per over that span. And in the 18 games against the Oilers over the last 3 years in the playoffs, he has 19 points, and he's had 3+ shots in 17 of 18. So for whatever reason, he just puts pucks on net against the Oilers. So he's 6-1 to lead that series in goals. And then Jake, your guy, I think we can all get on board with this guy, Pavel Dorofeyev, at
There he is.
6-1 to lead the series in goals, playing alongside Hurdle, top power play time. He's been electric as well for Vegas. So those are some serious props, and I really do think that Vegas is probably my favorite pick in the first round, given how tough these other matchups are.
Dorofeyev is a gun, and they want to get him the puck on that power play, so I like the odds on that one. Means a pretty good matchup, and again, he's going to be in a lot of shooting areas for them. I like the Kempe shout there as well. Also don't mind that Kings third line, Deneau, Moore, and Warren Fogle. I think a line to keep an eye on in that series against Edmonton. Could be a bit of an X factor, all three of them. Nick, where'd you land on Tampa Bay and Florida? Tampa, a slight dog over at Bet365, minus 105, minus 115 for the Florida Panthers right now. I think some good value. If you're someone that doesn't believe in the Leafs and you can pick a lane in this series, some good prices for these teams moving forward. Nikita Kucherov, 28-1 for Conn Smythe, things like that. I think I'm leaning Tampa, but where are you at on this one, Nick?
Yeah, this one has been a really difficult one for me to break down. Just, again, everything I talked about. Florida's going to hit a wall at some point in time. Maybe it's here against Tampa, but they always seem to play their best hockey against the Lightning. So I'm going to take the Florida Panthers in this series. I just think they're the better team. Not that I think Tampa's frauds or anything, but I don't think they're as good as people are putting them out to be. Bjorkstrand's hurt. Chafee's hurt. I still wonder about their depth in the bottom six. I know they got Vasi. I know they got Hedman. They got Cooch. They got Point. Like, they got some gamers on that roster, but it just seems like Florida's found that magic elixir to be able to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And barring something unforeseen like Matthew Tkachuk not playing in that series, which I think would change the price significantly, I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers. But last but not least, let's go around the horn here. Means we'll start with you. Do you have a Stanley Cup winner for us?
Man, I joined Jake and the boys yesterday on SiriusXM, and I was all team Dallas. But I'm telling you, the Robertson thing bothers me. This is a team that has allowed the most shots on goal at 5 for 60 over the last 6 weeks. There's no Mira Heiskanen, so I'm changing my tune here. I have a Final Four of the Colorado Avalanche, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Florida Panthers, and the Washington Capitals. I think we'll see Colorado win the Cup, and I do have Florida going back once again. I am a little nervous of how they played lately, but I'm with you, Nick. I think that this team could flip the switch. They've rested some guys down the stretch. Kachuk is an X factor, there's no question. But, Ekblad missing some time here down the stretch, too. Could see him pretty healthy come game 3. So I like the Panthers to go back, but I'm on the Avs, and I think a lot of us here on the show maybe.
It's tough, guys. It's tough to weed through these teams. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just look at the odds over at Bet365. Like, nobody is a runaway favorite right now. Again, some of these odds, based on money bet over the course of the season, you're going to see Edmonton, Dallas propped up a little bit. I'm projecting a Winnipeg, LA conference final out in the West, guys, and give me Washington versus Tampa Bay over in the East, and your Stanley Cup champions, the Winnipeg Jets, the whiteout in Winnipeg. I think they're going to get it done. The Stanley Cup comes back to Canada. It won't be Toronto, but Winnipeg is going to get it done. Pete, what about your Cup pick here?
So I got Colorado over Florida. I think Florida's going to put it together here. They just feel like a team that's going to get a lot of pieces back at the right time, and everybody's going to be healthy for them. I don't have them winning it, but I have them beating the Lightning in 7. I think that's going to be just a total dogfight. But Colorado, yeah, just the team they've assembled with Nelson and Blackwood, Wedgwood, such a great tandem. They still have a deep defense. The forward group is extremely deep. They added Coyle. I mean, the Nelson trade was major. The Nietzsche's trade. I mean, this is a team that is as equipped as the 2022 team. Makar won the Conn Smythe that year. Maybe Mac wins it this year. That's my pick.
Guys, I love revenge. We're dating things back to 2006. I'm going Edmonton. I'm going the Carolina Hurricanes in my Stanley Cup final, and I think the Oilers win the Stanley Cup. There's a reason why the Oilers are the betting favorite, definitive betting favorite to start this season. I'm going to stick with them. They'll probably maybe even burn me in the first round, but whatever. And Carolina's a team everybody's going to sleep on. How often does it happen in the NHL where people sleep on a team? Year after year, they were the Cup favorite, Cup pick. And now this year, nobody's talking about Carolina, and I could see them going on a significant run here. So I'm really intrigued overall here by the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it should be really, really fascinating to see sort of what happens and how things break down. All right, Means, excellent job. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs at Bet365? We've got you covered from game props, player props, totals on the money line. You can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, the Stanley Cup champions, and much, much more. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you're someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit ConnexOntario.ca. Jake, it is go time on the Stanley Cup playoffs. We are 2 sleeps away here.
Soak in these next couple weeks, Nick. It really is the best time to be a hockey fan. Not that the second round, the conference final, the Stanley Cup final aren't great. Obviously they are, but as we get deeper into summer, okay, yeah, you want to go outside, but the weather's still kind of gross in a lot of places. Just tuck yourself in, find a good spot, 3-4 games every single night. I think we're going to get some deep series too. I know we talked about potential sweeps. Usually you do get surprised by one sweep that you don't really see coming, but I think we get some deep series, so I'm really looking forward to the next couple weeks here.
Tell you what, before you get started in the Stanley Cup playoffs, make sure to check out the latest editions of NHL Unscripted and Energy Line. Thank you to producer Bob Bender. Phenomenal job today.
Great job.
Producer Bob
Unreal
Bender.
job.
For Jay Con, Pete Jensen, and Chris Meany, I'm Nick Alberga. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice, delivered by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.